First of all, I would like to stress that the reason why I'm specifically addressing this issue today is linked to the fact that France will be the chair of the so-called COP21 climate change conference at the end of this year. So that gives us a specific position, and this is the one which I'm trying to explain. We have our own views, we have our specific situation in terms of carbon emissions. We'll come to that. But as chair of the conference, we have it's necessary that we guarantee to everybody neutrality and partiality, and that's what we are trying to do, so as to be able to bridge the gaps and bring everybody on board among 195 countries at the end of this year on one position and one treaty which will provide solutions for the climate change problem. So this is our current situation. So part of the job is, of course, to try to reach out to the governments to try to find the way forward. It's also to gather ideas. It's also to ensure that the debate in the civil society is vibrant. And I'm taking this challenge very seriously, of course. And this is part of the reason why I'm trying, everywhere I go, and in Hyderabad notably, to exchange views on the matter. Needless to say that the Copenhagen precedent, which is very much in our thinking, and we try to avoid in terms of diplomatic method the error which were committed at that time, and to work differently. You know the big parameter. The objective is to ensure that the world by the end of this century will not increase its temperature beyond 2 degrees centigrade. In itself, that prospect, and it's a ceiling, ideally there should be no increase of temperature, but everybody anticipates that there will be, and even these 2 degrees will trigger changes in the world. So we have to take that into account. The objective, of course, is to be below 2 degrees. It should be normally 0 increase, but we anticipate that the movement is such that we will not be able to limit that. In terms of Indo-French relation, we have a very strong dialogue with India on the matter. Of course, we don't agree on everything, but during the visit of the Prime Minister to France in April, there was an extended discussion on the matter, and I think on the basic issues, we agree. Basic issues means, is there climate change? Response is yes. Is this a consequence of human activities? Response is yes. Do we need to do something to avoid these consequences? The answer is yes. Do we believe that the conference at the end of this year is the right venue to rally the international community? The answer is yes. So that's already a good, strong platform. And of course, now the question is, what can we do to achieve this success? And on this, we continue to work hard. I mentioned the fact that we agree between France and India to say that, yes, there is climate change. And I think when you look at the overall global opinion about very small pockets, what has changed since the Copenhagen summit is that the so-called climate skeptics are now very few. I think the scientific work which was done under the IPCC has now convinced everybody, and at least most governments, that of the nature of the problem. And in this respect, I think the scientific community has done its job, and well. They started with impressions which were shared among the people, and they worked hard step by step gathered the data and the analysis which led to this. The consequences, I'm not going to give you a full lecture on this, they are very well known. The disturbance in the everyday life of the planet will lead towards very negative impacts in many areas of the world in many different ways. So each region will have to bear the consequences in different ways. But what we can already anticipate, the melting of the glaciers and the poles and all the consequences stemming from that, the rise of the oceans, the migration of population, the drying and growing of deserts. All this is on the map coming. In some areas, you will find people which will find advantage in climate change because the climate will be much nicer than it used to be in some part in Northern Europe. But the overall consequences can only be disastrous. The response is twofold. It's called adaptation and mitigation. Adaptation, it's, well, this is a new reality. We have to live within that reality. Of course, mitigation is to try to avoid that it happens, and both work hand in hand. There is also another element in that preparation of the conference. It is the role that is attributed to other than governments. The government experts are not only, of course, are the final negotiators, but it is part of the negotiation that many other stakeholders will be there and will have their say. Of course, the scientists, this is absolutely key, but also the business community, because it's part of the responsibility of the business community to widespread the solutions. The civil society across the board. So we will have and local authorities, because in many cases it's really locally that the solutions can be implemented. So we try, of course, to reach out to all these different communities so that they contribute to the debate. I mentioned some cases of existing changes in climate, consequences of the changes in climate. I'm moving around in India for several years now, and I've seen in many different places people talking about what they are noticing. Himachal Pradesh, melting of the glaciers and the snow, and they anticipate big problems with the development of waterfalls and instability of the terrain. West Bengal, which has no solution for the moment to the rise of the ocean, which means that, of course, there will be coastal erosion, but also penetration of salted ocean water into the soil, with all the risk for the underground water. I visited also I had an interesting discussion with the Nagaland authorities, which is a very landlocked and poor area, but the rivers are drying, and they're very worried about that. I went also to Gujarat, where I could notice how the desert is moving southward. So all this is very interesting, of course, very worrying as well, but also very interesting to witness, because they are very clear-cut example, and India has the privilege, if I may say so, to have such a diversity of climate and type of environment that you can see the different kind of consequences like a laboratory in itself. What I've said, we should reach an agreement. The key component of that agreement, what are they? And this is what we aim at. First of all, a universal but differentiated agreement. Universal, it's because it's a global cause, but differentiated because each country has specificities and its ability to cope with a challenge, in its ability to develop solutions, in its record in terms of carbon emissions, past record or future record. So all this has to be taken into account. It won't be a one-size-fits-all thing. What has to be one-size-fits-all in any case is the global objective of the international community to limit the temperature rise. The second thing is, and it is a key one, what is called INDC, I never remember that acronym, which each government will have to produce in advance of the conference a national contribution, which consists of all the whole range of policies and the whole range of solutions they intend to develop, either to mitigate climate change or to adapt to the consequences of climate change. So this will be very important documents, because after they are compiled, and the scientific committee will have a chance to measure what is the level of ambitions across the world to cope with the change, will determine whether or not this is sufficient to limit the rise of temperature. If we are beyond what is necessary, of course, it will be a matter of great enjoyment, and everybody will be happy. I don't know what will be the result of that review, but we have to also to prepare ourselves for the situation where it would be insufficient. And in that case, there will be certainly a call for some to do more. The delta is not yet established. We will see, and we are still in the process of receiving and compiling the national contributions. Third, there is a need for a financial package. It's an old-time call of the developing countries, in particular the poorest, who bear a lot of the consequences of the situation in Africa. And so the promise is that we will gather $100 billion by the time of the conference and for the years to come. There is already $10 billion in the Green Fund, and we expect more contributions by the end of this year. This will, there is not yet full understanding on how the money will be spent, but clearly the focus will be the poorest country, which have no capacity whatsoever to adapt or mitigate climate change. And lastly, of course, as I said earlier, we'll also rely very much on the contribution of all the different constituencies I mentioned. And I think in this respect, the contribution of researchers and research centers is extremely important, because they will be at the forefront to facilitate the emergence of new technologies in the future to cope with the climate. We reflect today with the state of art that we know. It's not here that I'm going to tell you that research is basically a dynamic, and that we may find solutions in a couple of years, better solutions at least, and so that's definitely part of the overall engagement. I would like then to identify a couple of debates which you may see emerging here and there. The first one is something which I believe is quite artificial between the pro-development or pro-business and the pro-environment and pro-green. All this. It is very artificial in the sense that when you look at it, the climate agenda is clearly also a growth agenda, but a growth in a different manner. So there is certainly an element of change, but there is, apart from some very limited circle of people who advocate returning to rock caves, the idea is there that policies stemming from the fight against climate change can generate growth. And I think this is extremely important and very much underestimated. I'll give you an example. Everywhere I go, I can see in India a number of companies, industrialists, which are already investing in the manufacturing of equipment or in standards, which will make their production climate friendly. And this is very important, in particular, for example, in the solar industry. Of course, the big problem everybody knows with solar is that there is no sun at night. So what do you do? How do you store the electricity? It's very difficult. There is no solutions today, but at least you can produce solar during the day. And many new companies are emerging, and they are expecting that the conference in Paris will launch, will be an opportunity to launch new projects so that it gives visibility in terms of investment, so that their investment become economically viable. And when there is a big push, that will generate more production and the cost will go down. You can already see on the solar market that the costs of the solar electricity has been almost cut by the half. For example, in India, you can find an electricity produced thanks to solar at 6 to 6.5 rupees per kilowatt-hour. And this will probably go down further in the near future. The second thing, clearly there is also some changes in the everyday habits in the people of the world, in particular in the West. Consumption, the way it is practiced in the West for several decades, is not sustainable in the long run. At the same time, a number of newcomers arrive on solvable markets. This is something which has to be taken into account. We will not be able on this planet to consume as much as we have consumed without real reason to do it this way. And this is, I think, a question which shows that it's not only the governments which are concerned, it's not only the corporate which are concerned, it is also each and every individual on the planet who has to behave in a more responsible manner, whether it is vis-à-vis water, vis-à-vis waste, vis-à-vis his everyday life. And I can give you two examples of what we have decided to do in France, even if they may sound a bit trivial, I think they're an example of what we are trying to do. The first one is in 2016, by the end of 2016, we will ban the use of plastic bags. There will be no more plastic bags produced in France and no more plastic bags used in France. People say, what are we going to do? And, well, you are going to carry a bag which is not made with plastic. Or we can use paper bags, or you can use jute bags. That will be a good business opportunity for India, by the way. And we will put an end to this plastic bag that everybody sees everywhere, which finishes in the sea, that the fishes are eating, and which is creating a lot of disturbance. And all this is just oil at the end of the day. The second movement that we are taking, all this by law, is will put an end to the waste of food in restaurants and canteens and things like that. Clearly, there is overconsumption for no nutrition, and all this food is wasted and thrown into the bin. This is both morally unacceptable and economically non-viable, and each and every piece of food that people have in their plate is also contributing through the human activity to climate change. And so you can see there is both an element of moral and attitude, and an element which is related to put an end to waste. So this will be severely restricted, and we hope that this will reduce the consumption in France. Indeed, you will see in India similar projects which are emerging, and notably the Smart City project and the Swachh Bharat project are very important in this respect, because a smart city is a clean city. It's also a city which manages its waste in an intelligent manner. Swachh Bharat, by definition, is also contributing to that, and it will help change the mindset as well. So when we are talking about climate change, everybody thinks of how to produce electricity, coal versus solar and others, but I would like to highlight this component because it's very much in relation with everyday habits of the citizen, and at the end it will be the citizens in each country which will put an end to climate change. It's, I would like to give you another couple of examples on the interaction with the economics, um, and why this is also a pro-growth model. In India, the Prime Minister has launched a Make in India campaign. It's very interesting if you look at it from the climate change angle. And he said, when presenting the initiative, that it will be industrialization with zero defect and zero effect on climate. It's a very ambitious agenda indeed. But the simple fact that it is announced like this shows that at least the concern is taken into account in the mainstreaming of that policy. And it's a completely different view of the traditional pro-growth industrialist supporters. And if that model can be taken forward, I think that will be very important as an alternative model to the one the West has produced since the 1960s, or which is developed until now and still in China. Interestingly, the Make in India campaign implies that you produce goods in India instead of importing them, and that you produce nearby your customer. And this is a very innovative way, which is of course completely contrary to what you can hear in the last few years of the global sourcing. You produce nearby your customer because nearby your customer, you are closer to him. You can interpret his expectation, and also you reduce the consumption associated with transport, which means, of course, fuel, which means packaging, which means a number of other activities which are related to that. We are not going back to Swadeshi attitude. It is just that to the further extent possible, if you produce nearby your customer, you are also contributing to limiting to a certain degree the climate change problem. We'd like also to highlight the tourism element. Everybody knows that tourism is and will become more and more in the years to come a very important part of the growth model in many countries, at least those who have heritage and beautiful nature like India. Tourism generates pollution because you have to travel. But tourism is also a way to improve the country by many accounts, whether it is cleaner, where it is better organized, because there is money to gain from that. And that helps shape the minds in this respect. And a clean country is a country which attracts tourists. An unclean country, dirty country, a polluting country will only attract additional investment in the wrong sector. Everybody speaks about the Chinese investments worldwide now. Many are afraid that it will be just delocalization of polluting industries that China doesn't want anymore, and they will plant somewhere else. So that's, I think, an interesting approach as well. And many hotels, for example, the ITC hotel chain, have now completely green hotels, which are producing their own electricity and their own water, cleaning their water, produce no waste. We have very interesting experiments in India in this respect. Now let me come to the core problem that everybody knows about, the energy problem. This is, of course, the key because energy production represents something like 60 to 70% of the carbon emissions. So if you succeed to fix the energy problem, you have already done a large part of the way, bearing in mind that, again, since this is something that each citizen has to take into account, it's not only about the big industrialists in energy to work on that, it's also, again, to advocate so that everybody changes its attitude. No need to say that, let's say, the traditional carbon-emitting energies are the core of the problem, and that we have a range of solutions to that, which have to be balanced in accordance with each country's requirements. I give you an example of how we have coped with that. Since France is a country in the Western world, let's say, developed world, which has a lesser carbon emission in the world. This is based on massive recourse to nuclear energy, which started in the 1970s. And that story is quite interesting. Why did we do that in the 1970s? Not because we love nuclear, or not because we expected that climate change may become a threat. It was purely because we wanted to ensure our energy security. There was no environmental concern here at all. We were shocked by the oil crisis of the early 1970s, and we decided that we didn't want to be dependent upon the imported oil of the Gulf and any crisis which may occur there. So we started to build nuclear power plants for that purpose. And nowadays we have 65% of our electricity which is coming from nuclear. The consequence is that we have very limited carbon emissions because we have no coal-based electricity, very limited oil-based electricity, and we have enjoyed that very much. We have bulk, stable electricity everywhere at a very cheap price. It's the cheapest in Europe, by the way. Of course, it's not a solution for everybody because the whole world cannot have 65% electricity produced by nuclear means, but it shows that it can be a solution for countries with a large industrial bases and large cities which require a flow of electricity on a steady basis. You could tell me that our big neighbor in Germany has decided to phase out nuclear. That was their choice, and the fact is that they procure electricity in France, and their carbon emissions have started to grow again because thermal power was reused. They are building new thermal power plants, and so there is a big debate here. There was a lot of fear, of course, about nuclear pollution and all this, Fukushima. True, but I don't know any kind of energy which is not dangerous in a way or another. Coal, many people die from coal, whether because they are doing the mining or because of the pollution. That's the role of science to try to, of course, address this problem. In France, we have made a choice, and we will stick to it. And we'll keep the current level of electricity production with nuclear means at the same pace in the future. Indeed, in India, coal is exactly the mirror energy. It's roughly 60%, 65% of energy output in India. And this will continue to be the case because you cannot replace all these nuclear power plants within a couple of years. It's a complete different model which has to be built and which will take obviously a lot of time. Even if some improvements can be made in terms of clean coal technologies to be included in this. The question for India will be more on how to ensure to the further extent possible that the additional growth which will take place in India in the future, let's say 7, 8, 9% per year, can be absorbed by non-carbon emitting sources of energy. It's very challenging, indeed, very challenging, but it is possible. And I was referring to Gujarat at the beginning of this lecture. When I was there, I was briefed on what has happened over the last 10 years regarding the growth of the recourse to solar energy. It was 0% 10 years ago, and it's now something like 16 or 18% of the total output. The massive investment was consented into solar energy. And it is probably the only state in India which has decreased its dependency to coal. There is, of course, still a majority, big majority of coal-based power, but it has been reduced, which is in a context of relatively rapid growth in that state, particularly remarkable because it shows, as I said earlier, that you can absorb the additional need for electricity by developing on a large scale the non-carbon emitting sources. By comparison, in France, as I told you, we have decided to keep the level of nuclear electricity, but we will continue to do efforts towards non-carbon emitting energy sources by developing aggressively solar and wind, which in comparison we have far less than India, by the way, in proportion. And so the big endeavor is now to make that a natural complementary element to nuclear, and will reduce to nil at some point the energy we produce on the basis of carbon emitting sources. In this debate, and that includes also energy efficiency and conservation of energy and all this, technology is absolutely the key. And if you put it from an economic perspective, the effect of technology is efficiency, swiftness, and cutting costs, which is exactly what we require to make the energy technologies, clean energy technologies, affordable, available, and quickly. For example, over the last few years, look at what people were talking about regarding solar energy 10 years ago. Nobody really trusted it, only some green activists. And now you can see this moving forward everywhere. Young industrialists launching companies. And everybody suddenly realizing that when you are a country with a lot of sun, and India certainly is this case, you can do two things at the same time, ensuring your energy security, which is a big challenge for India, and limiting climate change. So the two things are very much connected. Solar and wind, of course, it's at your disposal in the sky. You don't have to import anything. It's just coming onto you. And therefore you can reduce both your dependency and your contribution to carbon emission. The prospect of big market in this respect is going to generate more investment and more R&D, and therefore the costs will be reduced. And most probably they will merge into one direction with the carbon emitting energies in the future. We have a certain number of cooperation between France and India. We're trying to move forward in these areas as well. In the nuclear field, we have a big project for 10,000 megawatts in Maharashtra, Jaitapur, Maharashtra. It's a very big operation. It has been delayed because of the Fukushima disaster, which has created some fear. This is cleared now, and we are moving forward. Solar is going on a big way. The total output of solar energy in India, 10% of this is produced by French companies, which are basically now Indian companies, but they are originally from France. So they produce 10% of the solar energy in India. They have invested in solar parks. And the plan is now to make them produce 10% of the plan that the Prime Minister has announced, that is 100 gigawatts. So they will do 10 gigawatts, hopefully by 2022, should they, of course, win the competitions in this area. Wind energy, we don't do much, but what we're currently doing is to work with Indian partners on very forward-looking but non-economically viable technologies that which are currently being experimented. I'm thinking in particular of ocean thermal energy conversion using the differences of temperature between different layers of the water. And this will be tested in the Andaman and Nicobar Island, which of course have a very specific energy situation. Water, we have a large number of initiatives, Indo-French Water Wet Network, which associates scientists and businessmen and local authorities. We work also on urban water management and distribution, trying to reduce the loss and make it marketable again. I was struck by the late Planning Commission figure, which says that 80% of the water in India is not treated. And you can see, of course, the consequence for the Yamuna and the Ganga. This is something which implies not only the treatment of the water, but very sound policies regarding what kind of industry is posted on the banks of the rivers. So, as I said, it's a whole vision of the economy which is coming up, and more disciplined and more predictable activities rather than curing it thereafter. Urban development is, of course, a very, very important area in which we are working hand in hand. We expect, of course, like everybody, the population, urban population in India to grow very fast, probably 600 million by 2030. And everybody knows that an urban dweller consumes more electricity and more energy than rural area population. Everybody expects that this will happen anyway. So India has to prepare itself to cope with a growing urban population and therefore a demand for electricity. So how can this be addressed? The Smart City project is clearly a very intelligent one. It's not only about e-city and all this kind of thing. It's just smart means intelligent. Intelligence is not always artificial. This can be human intelligence applied to the functioning of the city. And I came yesterday with a delegation specialized in this kind of infrastructure to interact with Telangana government on what could be done for the future of Telangana to help the cities to become smarter than they are today. And for that purpose, we have mobilized a line of credit of 2 billion euros, which will be used for water projects, energy conservation projects, energy efficiency, and similar things, and urban transport. Space, lastly, we have two Indo-French satellites launched in 2011 and 2013, Saral and Megatropic, which were co-developed by ISRO and its French counterpart. And their goal is to provide relevant information on what the consequence of climate change and on coastal areas and the monsoons. And all this is worked out by the National Institute of Oceanography in Goa. And of course ISRO. And you can see that here the companies or the industrial sector has a very important role to play in all these different areas of cooperation. So because when we talk about transfer of technology, which is also an issue dealt with in the context of the negotiation, the reality of the world today is that the technology is owned by the private corporate sector. No government today is able to come and say, I'm going to transfer technology of this or that. The French government doesn't know how to do cement, the sustainable cement. The French government doesn't know how to have electric appliances which will save energy. So it's all in the hands of the company. And what is crystal clear here is that their R&D, and the economic viability of the project they develop will be key in the future to ensure that these technologies are widespread everywhere and can reduce the emission of carbons. This is why we bet very much on technology, not only to adapt ourselves, but also to mitigate the consequences. And as I said, it will not be only the corporate or the government, it will be also the citizen which will have to take a stake in this big endeavor, and limiting some of the excesses of the Western civilization will be at the core of this great project. So I thank you very much for your attention, and of course, I'm absolutely ready to respond any question you may have. Thank you.